Hi Belly Art Club artists, this is Alex and you're watching my very first daily doodle video for you all. You'll need some basics, a sketchbook, a pencil or a set of artist pencils, a sharpener, eraser, a black Sharpie marker or any black ink pen, and these are optional for you to add color. You can use crayons, pastels, markers, a nearby highlighter, and some yummy tea or coffee. A sketchbook is meant to be a way for an artist to let loose, have fun, and lay down ideas for future projects. And I'd love for each of us to start a sketchbook or maybe continue one you already have. Look out for announcements on pop-up drawing classes and Belly Art Club meetups at maybe museums, parks, or cafes, and you'll definitely want to bring your sketchbook then. So let's begin. Let's start with the simple and talk about the types of lines you can use to create shapes in your doodles and drawings. We have continuous, dashed lines, hatching or diagonal lines which go in many directions, either parallel or crisscrossing, which is also known as cross-hatching. And then you can experiment with squiggles like I do here, any direction, however you feel, and then there's cloud formations and maybe little vine-like shapes. You can do anything on those. It's a free-for-all. Let's talk about shading, or in other words, giving the illusion that light is hitting an object. It's about lights and darks. It's an illusion, so in the beginning it might be a little funky, but as you continue shading the object, you'll see it coming alive. I like to draw a little arrow of where I think the light is coming from, and here I'm using hatch marks, diagonals, parallels, and cross-hatching. The closer the lines are, the darker it's going to look, and the farther you draw the lines, the lighter that area is. Also notice how I'm curving my hatch marks. Because the shape is round, I want to make sure that the shading reflects the shape that I'm drawing. Hopefully you've already experimented with lines and some shading. I'll now show you a doodle of a dried flower to put together what we've learned so far. So the first pencil I grabbed is a 4B, but if you don't have these artist pencils, no worries, you can grab any pencil. Here's how you'll start. In dashes or hatch marks, very light lines, very light, to just lay out where the flower is on the table, and maybe where the darker parts are and the lighter parts. So it's just really soft lines. Don't start out with details or continuous lines because then you'll end up erasing a lot. I'm switching my pencil to be a lighter shade, an HB. And basically what I'm doing is now I'm going in and I'm kind of coloring or shading in the darker and the lighter areas more. You'll see, it's a process. And in the beginning it doesn't look like anything. It just looks like flat lines. But as you progress and you have fun with the shading and the hatch marks or the squiggles, you can do whatever. And it definitely doesn't have to be the same thing that I'm doing. You can choose any flower. So I went in and I started to shade where the darker areas of the flower were. In the middle of the flower, on the bottom, so on and so forth. And then I expanded out into the table. And because it's such a simple little doodle, there's not much going on around. I'm just focusing on the flower and the technique and having fun with the pencils. And you don't have to really worry too much about details. Now let's talk about when you already have the flower in place and the shading, how are you going to finish the details? Well, the details in the darker part actually come from dashes, dark dashed lines that will create the density and the volume of the flower. Barely do we ever use continuous lines. That's maybe if you're doing the squiggle shading, the cloud-like shading, it's a continuous line. But when we're doing these kind of doodles, or if you want to do a quick shade or a quick drawing, then we would want to do the dashes, the quick little lines, so that we don't end up making the drawing too linear. We want it to be open, free-flowing, so we'll use open marks instead of closed continuous lines. Now I'm basically done with the pencils, and I want to add a little bit more highlight because my paper is an off-white color. So I'm going to grab a white chalk. You can use pencil also, or a color pencil, and I'm going to dash out, basically using dash lines, the part where the light is hitting. So that's on top of the flower, above, and I use those dash marks to fill in and lay out where those highlights are. So I want to add a little bit of warmth to my flower. So I took this brown, and again I'm doing the hatch marks where I see the shadows. If you want to blend, you could use your finger or a blending stump. Be careful, it does get a little messy if you use the chalk pastels. Next up, I'm going to grab the black Sharpie or the black ink pen, which is optional. You don't need to use this. This will create a little bit more of you could use it as a contrasting tool. And if you start drawing with it more and creating bigger lines with the Sharpie or the black ink, it might make it look a little cartoony. But that's okay. It'll be up to you. It's a doodle, so you want to experiment, you want to have fun with it. So now I went a little farther into my imagination, and I feel like I want the flower to be under the starry sky. So I made some stars with the Sharpie, I drew them in, and I'm making a little moon, it's a little smiley face. You know, just a little fun doodle, nothing too crazy, nothing too stressful. And now we see the doodle building up more. We see more of the shape, more of the ambiance. At the end of each drawing, to put the cherry on top, don't forget to write down the date and your signature or your name so you complete and finalize that doodle.